Hello my hero, have a nice viewing dear. If you like the story, please like it and write your opinion in the comments, please.
I let my wife run my business, and she used it to fund her affair with a waiter she met at brunch. I used to believe that building something with the person you love was the dream. That trust wasn't just a choice, it was the foundation. Olivia and I weren't just partners in marriage, we were partners in everything. Especially the business. What started as a small neighborhood cafe exploded into a multi-location culinary brand. The kind with waitlists, press coverage, influencer hype. And it was ours, mine in concept, hers in execution. She handled payroll, invoices, supplier relationships. I was the chef, the creative. She was the engine. People admired us. Called us the power couple. I should have noticed when that label stopped making her smile. It started subtle. Receipts not matching, a few invoices marked, consulting, to vendors I didn't recognize. At first, I thought it was just growing pains. She brushed it off. Just temporary hires, she said. Side expenses. Tax stuff. I didn't push. The first real warning came from a friend who worked at our flagship location. He said Olivia had started showing up midday, dressed like she was heading to a rooftop party, not a business meeting. Sitting at table 9, always table 9, with some guy he didn't recognize. A guy with a tight black apron and an even tighter smirk. Who is he? I asked. She laughed. Oh, just one of the servers from a place I like. Great energy. I'm mentoring him a bit, he wants to start his own cafe someday. Something in me clenched. But again, I let it go. Because I trusted her. Because who questions their own wife like that? Then came the whispers. A supplier called and asked if I wanted to continue the double shipments to his address. Whose address? I asked. He gave me the name, Daniel Mendez. It didn't register right away. I thought maybe it was a subcontractor. A storage partner. But when I asked Olivia, she froze. Just for a second, a crack in her calm. I'll look into it, she said. And then, quickly, must be an error. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay beside her in bed, her back turned to me. Her breathing steady. And all I could think about was table 9. The next morning, I got up early and pulled the business accounts. Line by line. Transaction by transaction. Thousands were being funneled out every month. Not just to Daniel, but to places with names like Casa de Azul, a beach rental agency in Tulum, MZ Styling, a men's fashion boutique, Cafe Luna, a rival restaurant, and every single one traced back to him. He wasn't just a waiter. He was her lover. And she was bankrolling his entire life, with my money, my business, my trust. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I did something else. I started planning. Because if Olivia thought she was smart, she hadn't seen me play yet. They thought I was blind. But I watched them, and I prepared. After I discovered the money trail, everything about Olivia clicked into place. The long supplier meetings, that didn't need invoices. The boutique deliveries she hid under the bed. The tan lines in November. The lies, tiny, silk thread lies, woven so thin you'd only see them if you stared long enough. And I stared. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I observed. She thought I was distracted with our new seasonal menu, late-night wine tastings, the staff training program. And I played my role well, the exhausted husband, trusting, preoccupied. But every night, while she slept, I pulled records. Invoices. Bank statements. Internal messages. Supplier contracts. And then, I got curious about Daniel. He wasn't just a pretty face behind an espresso machine. He had ambitions, a GoFundMe for a new Latin fusion concept. 38 backers, nearly $17,000, most of it from one anonymous donor. I didn't need a forensic accountant to figure out who that was. He worked part-time at a rooftop brunch spot called Viento. I went there once, sat outside. Ordered a black coffee and just watched. He smiled at every table. Poured mimosas. Touched too many shoulders. Acted like the world owed him love and tips. And when Olivia walked in wearing the red wrap dress I bought her for our anniversary, I knew. She kissed his cheek. Sat at table 9. Laughed like she'd never once cried in my arms. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I took a photo. Later that night, I opened a new file on my computer. Named it Exit Plan. And for the next 3 weeks, I worked on it like it was my life's greatest recipe. Step 1. Reclaim the company. She was listed as co-owner. 50%. But the trademark, the chef's signature, my name, was mine. The menu, the culinary patents, the real IP? Filed under my LLC. Quietly. Years ago. Just in case. She never bothered to ask. Step 2. Freeze discretionary spending. I redirected company card alerts to my private inbox. I flagged her transfers to Daniel's shell accounts. 2 were registered under fake business names, both recently opened. I reported the activity to the fraud department. Quietly. She got a call 2 days later. Your card's been frozen. She blamed the bank, of course. Probably a system glitch. I nodded, sipping my coffee. Happens. Step 3. Plant the seeds. I told our manager, Lisa, a brilliant, loyal woman who'd been with us since day one, that I was considering a rebrand. Something fresh, I said. New leadership structure. Lisa was sharp. She didn't ask why. She just said, I'm in. By the end of the week, I'd spoken to 3 key investors and 2 of our longest-serving staff. All of them respected Olivia. None of them trusted her. Not anymore. And just to be thorough, I hired a private investigator. 2 weeks later, I had what I needed: photos of Olivia and Daniel vacationing in Puerto Vallarta. Transaction logs. Voicemails. One particularly poetic shot of them drinking champagne in a hot tub, paid for by a corporate card labeled Client Entertainment. She didn't even try to hide it. But the final proof? That came from Daniel's own mouth. I met him. He didn't know who I was, just that some investor wanted to meet about his new restaurant idea. He showed up to the cafe I rented for the meeting in an overpriced blazer and fake humility. I asked about funding. He smirked. My girl takes care of that, he said. I smiled. What's she like? Rich. Bored. Stupid in love, he said. Easy money, man. That was it. The moment. The switch flipped inside me. The quiet man was gone. Because now I wasn't just building an exit. I was building a trap. She was stealing from me in broad daylight, so I turned her dream into her downfall. After that meeting with Daniel, something inside me settled. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness anymore. It was purpose. Cold. Focused. Calculated. She had used my trust as a credit line. Now I was going to show her what overdraft really felt like. I started with the audit. Internally, I framed it as routine. Just tightening up before we open the 3rd location. I told her one night over dinner. She barely looked up from her phone. Sure. Whatever. I brought in a forensic accountant under NDA, a guy who used to work for the IRS. Within 4 days, we had everything. Over $142,000 misallocated in less than 10 months. Fake vendor names linked to Daniel. Rent payments for a loft registered under her maiden name. She wasn't just supporting him. She was setting him up. Like she was building a second life, without me. Next step, isolate the infection. I started transferring sensitive accounts and operational control to Lisa and myself. Olivia noticed, once. What's this login issue on payroll? I shrugged. IT's cracking down. Security compliance. You know how it is. She let it go. She always underestimated me, always assumed I was too focused on truffle oils and tasting menus to care about balance sheets. She forgot that I built this from nothing. I could tear it down and rebuild it without her. Then came the bait. I told her I was flying to New York for a week, supplier negotiations. Really, I was 5 blocks away, holed up in a downtown office with Lisa and my lawyer, finalizing the papers. I made it all legal. On paper, Olivia still held shares. But not for long. Because I'd quietly bought out every other stakeholder, every single one she didn't control. The moment I triggered the board clause, her voting power would be meaningless. Her titles? Revoked. Her access? Cut. Still, I wanted one more move. The checkmate. So I threw her a party. An anniversary celebration for the business. I rented out the first location, invited press, friends, staff, even Daniel, who came dressed like a discount model and tried to shake my hand. I shook it. One last time. Halfway through the night, I stood up with a toast. "Thank you all for being here," I said. "Especially my wife, the woman who's been by my side since the beginning." She smiled, radiant, unaware. I lifted a folder from under the table. "And tonight, we're celebrating a new chapter. Effective immediately, we're restructuring the company. New leadership. New vision." Her smile flickered. She opened the folder I handed her, and saw the papers. Resignation by board decision. Asset transfer documentation. Legal notices for breach of fiduciary duty. "What is this?" I leaned in. "This is me reclaiming my life." The room was dead silent. Daniel froze, holding a flute of Prosecco like it was a grenade. "I know everything, Olivia," I whispered. "Every dollar. Every lie. Every touch you gave him with my money." She stood up, shaking. "You can't do this." I raised an eyebrow. "I already did," she stormed out. Daniel followed, his Instagram fame dreams crumbling behind him like broken glass. I let them go. The next day, she tried calling. Texting. Emailing. "You blindsided me. I made you everything. I loved you." No. She used me. And now? She was out. She thought losing the business was the worst part. She had no idea what was coming next. The morning after the celebration, Olivia's world began to shrink. Her company email was deactivated. Her company card declined at brunch. And her access to our internal systems? Gone. She tried to barge into the flagship location, shouting at Lisa, demanding a meeting, flailing documents she didn't understand. Lisa calmly informed her. "You're trespassing." The police were not called. But we were ready if she returned. She sent me a message later that afternoon. A voice memo, full of venom barely disguised as grief. "You don't have to humiliate me like this. We can talk. We built this together. Don't make it ugly." I didn't reply. Because I wasn't making it ugly. She had already done that. All I did was pull the curtain back and let her trip on the mess she made. And I wasn't done yet. You see, Olivia thought she'd buried her tracks well. That if I cut her out of the business, she could still access the savings accounts, the emergency fund we had set aside in a separate shell corporation. But that fund? It didn't exist anymore. Weeks ago, I'd legally moved it to a new holding entity under my name and Lisa's, for tax purposes, of course. I even let Olivia think it was still active. She went to withdraw $80,000 to lawyer up. She got a rejection, insufficient funds. That's when the text started shifting tone. First rage. "You thief. You slimy bastard." Then panic. "You can't leave me like this. I don't have anything." Then bargaining. "Just give me the apartment. That's all. I'll go quietly." But she forgot, the apartment was in my name. Always had been. I let her pack her things. I didn't rush her. Didn't threaten. Didn't scream. I just waited until the lease ended. Then sent her a letter, polite, formal, final. "I hope you find what you're looking for. Kindly vacate within 10 business days." I could have made it brutal. Eviction notice. court appearance. But no, I gave her dignity. Because that's what makes it sting more. She wasn't defeated by rage. She was dismantled by calm precision. By then, Daniel had stopped answering her calls. His Instagram, cafe concept, suddenly went private. The GoFundMe? Reported for fraudulent use. His name was flagged by our investors' network. Word spreads fast in the city. Especially when you burn the wrong bridge. She showed up at my office once. Unannounced. Hair unkempt. Eyes tired. Wearing a version of herself that even she didn't recognize anymore. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stood still. Measured. Detached. "You already said everything," I said. "When you paid for his dream with my sweat." She looked like she might cry. But I didn't flinch. Not because I hated her. But because I was done letting her manipulate the narrative. She left with nothing. No shares. No salary. No sanctuary. When you betray the man who built your world, don't act surprised when it collapses on top of you. Weeks passed. I didn't hear from Olivia. No texts. No calls. No drama. It was almost peaceful. Too peaceful. Until one morning, Lisa walked into my office, her phone in hand, and said, "You need to see this." It was a video. Grainy. Taken with a phone camera. Olivia, drunk, mascara smudged, standing outside Viento, screaming at Daniel in the middle of the sidewalk. "You used me. You promised me we'd open it together. You said we'd be partners." He was laughing. Shrugging. Arms crossed like he'd been through this exact tantrum before. "Olivia," he said coolly, "you were the wallet. That's it. You ran out of cash, so I ran out of interest." She slapped him. He didn't even react, just walked away. She stood there, shaking, people watching, filming, whispering. Once the darling of the brunch scene, now reduced to a meme with the title, "When Your Sugar Mama Goes Bankrupt." It spread like wildfire. Within 24 hours, she deleted all her social media. Within 48, the investors Daniel had charmed dropped him like a hot pan. Poetic, really. But I wasn't watching it all for revenge. I watched because I wanted to make sure she didn't drag me back down in the wreckage. She didn't have access to any of our accounts. No passwords. No equity. No leverage. But she still had her name. And the pity of those who didn't know the truth. So she started telling her version, to whoever would listen. That I was controlling. That I manipulated her out of the company. That I froze her out after she gave up everything for me. She even tried to sue for ownership of my intellectual property. The courts didn't even blink. All documentation, notarized, timestamped, witnessed, proved it was mine from the start. The judge dismissed her case in under 10 minutes. Afterward, I walked past her in the hallway. She looked up at me like she wanted to say something. I didn't stop. I didn't need to. Because she knew. Everyone did. Even her own attorney reportedly dropped her after the hearing. "Unwinnable," he said. A week later, I got a letter. No return address. Just her handwriting on the envelope. Inside was a single sentence. "You were the only thing I never deserved." No apology. No ownership. Just a sad little epitaph for a love she destroyed with her own greed. I didn't reply. I didn't even keep the letter. I burned it, slow, clean, final. Then I got back to work. Because while she was unraveling, I was building something new. I didn't just survive her betrayal. I built an empire from the wreckage. After everything collapsed, people expected me to disappear for a while. To go quiet. To heal. But I wasn't broken. I was awake. And for the first time in years, I was thinking clearly. I wasn't chasing someone else's dream anymore. I wasn't walking on eggshells, second-guessing decisions to keep the peace. My business was mine. My life was mine. I got up early. Worked late. Rewrote menus. Changed the name of the brand. Elia. My grandfather's name, the man who taught me how to cook over a campfire and told me, "Build something that lives longer than your pain." The rebrand was bold. Stripped down. Elegant. No more pretentious plating or influencer bait. Just food that made people feel something. The kind of food that reminded you who you were before the world got too loud. And people noticed. A local magazine called us the rebirth of fine dining. Customers lined up. Investors who once backed out were calling me again, asking to buy back in. I said no. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. I didn't need them anymore. And while my business was blooming, so was something else, something unexpected. It started with Lisa. She wasn't just my manager, she had become the spine of the company during the chaos. Loyal. Calm. Brutally honest. She never flirted. Never crossed the line. But there were moments. Tiny glances. Shared silences that said more than words could. One night, after a particularly long shift, I found her outside the back entrance, sipping tea in the cold air. She didn't look up when she said, "You finally look peaceful." I leaned against the wall beside her. First time in years. She turned to me then. And for the first time, I noticed how tired she looked too. Like she'd carried more than she ever let on. "I always knew," she said softly. "Knew what?" "About Olivia. Not the details. Just the energy. The way you flinched when she touched you. The way you never made eye contact when you talked about her." I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything left to say. She looked at me. "You didn't deserve that." And in that moment I realized something I hadn't before. It wasn't just Olivia's betrayal that scarred me. It was my own silence. My willingness to endure. To bend. To bleed quietly while pretending it didn't hurt. But not anymore. That night, Lisa and I didn't cross any lines. We just stood there. Two people who had watched the storm tear down the walls, and were now standing on new ground, building something real. Brick by brick. She came back when her world collapsed, but I wasn't the man she could manipulate anymore. It happened on a rainy Thursday afternoon. I was reviewing renovation plans with Lisa when my assistant buzzed the intercom. "There's a woman here, she says she's your wife." My ex-wife. I didn't flinch. I just looked at Lisa, who raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "Send her in," I said calmly. She walked in like a shadow, soaked trench coat, ruined makeup, and that same entitled expression she used to wear when she walked into meetings late and expected applause. "Do you have a minute?" she asked. I didn't answer. She took that as a yes. "I'm not here to fight," she began. "I'm not here to beg either. I need help." There it was. No pride left. No smugness. Just desperation. She sat down without being invited, eyes scanning my office. She noticed the photo on my desk, me and Lisa at the opening of Elia's newest location. Her lips tightened. "So," she said bitterly, "you and your assistant, huh?" I didn't react. "You didn't come here to ask about my personal life," I said. She looked away. "No, I didn't." She hesitated, then reached into her purse and pulled out a letter. Crumpled. Wet. "I'm being evicted," she said. "I don't have anywhere to go." I said nothing. She pressed on. "Daniel's gone. He skipped town after his business went under. Took everything he could. I made some mistakes." I almost laughed at how sterile she made it sound. Mistakes? As if embezzlement, lying, and betrayal were minor missteps. She looked up at me, eyes pleading. "I just need time. Alone. Something to help me get back on my feet. I'll pay you back. You know I will." I leaned forward slightly, meeting her gaze. "You think I'm the same man you used to lie to?" I said. "The one who let things slide? Who forgave before he even got an apology?" She swallowed hard. "I'm not that man anymore." She looked down. "I don't want you back," I continued. "Not your promises. Not your apologies. And definitely not your problems. She looked up again, angry now. I gave you the best years of my life. No, I said coldly. You gave me your performance. The best of your manipulation. The highlight reel of your selfishness. Her jaw tightened. You taught me a valuable lesson, Olivia. That not everyone who builds with you deserves a share of the foundation. I stood. You should go. For a moment, I thought she'd cry. But instead, she straightened, slapped the envelope on the desk, and turned to leave. Just before walking out, she said, One day you'll miss me. I smiled. I already stopped. She left. I watched the door close behind her, not with a bang, but with the soft finality of something that should have ended long ago. And for the first time since this entire storm began, I felt nothing. No pain. No guilt. Just clarity. She stole from me to build her fantasy. I used that loss to build my legacy. After Olivia left my office that day, the rain kept falling. But I didn't feel a drop. Because I was dry. Untouchable. Finally free. The past was over. And the future? It was mine now. I poured myself into Elia. The restaurant was thriving, not just as a business, but as an idea. A symbol. A place people came to for healing, for celebration, for stories layered into every plate. We expanded, a second location downtown. A pop-up in the wine country. Features in national magazines. A docuseries even reached out. And at the center of it all, quietly, steadily, was Lisa. We hadn't rushed into anything. But one evening, after a long day of prepping for a tasting event, we stayed back late. Just the two of us. Wine glasses. Jazz humming through the speakers. You ever think, she said, how none of this would have happened without her betrayal? I nodded. I do. You regret any of it? I paused, then looked her dead in the eyes. No, I said. Because she broke me in a way that forced me to rebuild myself stronger. Lisa smiled. And smarter. That night, I kissed her for the first time. Not out of loneliness. Out of respect. Out of shared battle scars. Out of something real. A few months later, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address again. Inside was a court summons. Olivia was filing for spousal support. The irony nearly made me laugh. Apparently, she'd burned through the last of her savings. The boutique job she landed didn't last. She tried launching a healing retreat for women but forgot that healing requires honesty, and clients started demanding refunds when they discovered her history. She claimed I had ruined her financially. My lawyer sent back a single-page response. All funds lost were self-appropriated and documented. No financial entitlement will be entertained. Client requests zero further contact. It never made it to court. The case was dropped. But the universe wasn't done with her yet. A month later, an old employee of mine, who now worked at another bistro, messaged me. Guess who showed up here begging for a manager job? Told them she used to co-own your place. They Googled her. Declined on the spot. I didn't even bother replying. I was too busy finalizing the Elia Foundation, a program to mentor young chefs from underrepresented backgrounds. Fully funded by the profits from the last 3 quarters. I named one of the scholarships after my mother. Another one? Lisa's. We hosted a soft launch party for the foundation on the rooftop of our newest location. As the sun set over the skyline, I raised a glass to the people around me, team, family, community. This isn't about revenge, I said. This is about what you do after betrayal. Do you become bitter? Or do you build? I built. And I wasn't done yet. She thought going public would save her. But all she did was set herself on fire. I should have known she wouldn't go quietly. Olivia never lost unless she had an audience. 2 weeks after the foundation launch, a video dropped on a mid-tier gossip channel, the kind that lives for scandal, especially when it involves chefs turned villains and scorned women. The thumbnail? A freeze frame of Olivia, teary-eyed, sitting in a minimalist chair, arms folded as if she were bracing for impact. The title? The Truth About My Marriage, How He Stole My Business and My Life. I didn't watch it. But Lisa did. And she gave me the summary. He manipulated me. Gaslit me. He was never there emotionally. He made me believe I was worthless unless I worked myself to exhaustion. She claimed she had no idea where the money had gone. That Daniel took advantage of her during a dark, vulnerable time. That I orchestrated her financial collapse out of jealousy. She even tried to spin the luxury vacations, the embezzled funds, the fake vendor accounts, saying she delegated too much and trusted the wrong people. It was impressive, really, watching her rebrand her betrayal as a survival story. But truth has teeth. And the internet doesn't forget. Within hours, our former staff began commenting. She fired a dishwasher for sneezing once. I was in accounting. She approved every Daniel transaction. Ask her about the $8,000 she spent on monogrammed robes for her wellness retreat. Someone posted the court documents. Then the screenshots. Then photos of her and Daniel in Puerto Vallarta, with timestamps. The comment section turned fast. It was like watching a dam collapse in reverse. All the lies Olivia built to protect herself washed away under the weight of receipts. And the final blow? One of the investors from Daniel's failed cafe venture posted a short video. She told us she owned 50% of the original brand. That she designed the menu. We invested $30,000. Lost all of it. Olivia, you scammed everyone, not just your husband. You owe us more than tears. After that? Silence. Her video was taken down within 3 days. Her name, now attached to tags like #fraudfluencer and #cavecatfish, trended for the wrong reasons. I never said a word publicly. Didn't issue a statement. Didn't gloat. I let the facts speak louder than her fiction ever could. And in the quiet that followed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Closure. Real closure. Not the kind you beg for. Not the kind that depends on apologies or confessions. The kind that comes from knowing the truth stood its ground, and won. She took everything from me, and still, I came out richer. It's been a year. 12 months since Olivia's world caved in. 12 months since I watched her walk out of my office for the last time. 12 months since I chose peace over bitterness. Elia is now in 4 cities. We don't chase hype, it chases us. The food speaks. The story whispers through every dish. Lisa and I? We never made a public announcement. We didn't need to. Those who know us can see it in the way we move around each other. The way I exhale differently when she walks into a room. The way her hand fits around mine like it always belonged there, just waited patiently to be noticed. Last week, we attended a culinary charity gala. I was invited to speak. Tell my story. Not the scandal, the rebuild. After my speech, an older woman approached me. Wrinkled hands. Sharp eyes. She looked like someone who'd lived through betrayal and come out tougher. She said, "You wear your pain like armor. But your joy, that's your weapon." I thanked her. And I realized she was right. What Olivia never understood was that you don't win by hurting someone. You win by surviving. By thriving. By choosing quiet over chaos. By building something so beautiful, so unshakable, that your enemies become irrelevant. A few nights ago, Lisa and I sat on the rooftop of our original location, the one where it all began. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You think she watches?" she asked. I looked out at the skyline, calm, lit, alive. "I hope she does," I said. Not out of cruelty. But because watching someone rise after you tried to bury them? That's the most brutal mercy there is. I sipped my wine and looked down at the city I rebuilt. Not just the buildings. But myself. My dignity. My freedom. And in that moment I knew. I didn't just survive the betrayal. I became the man she could never destroy.